point. So this is not going to apply to a lot, but there are some routes that currently get compensated for a lot pouch. A lot pouch is when a carrier is required to travel to another post office to deliver the mail. Maybe it's a duo, maybe it's a RMPO situation. So we have credited them with lot pouches. Well, this sort of replaces the lot pouch.
It doesn't seem bad.
It's the inter-service unit tab. Now, you have a low volume, you have a high volume. Low volume is when it's a low amount of mail that can pretty much be handled in one trip and carried in hand into the post office. But a high volume would be if you had to make multiple trips, or even if you had to use a loading conveyance, a hamper or a postcard, ABC, to transport that mail. So that is the difference in the high volume and low volume. You would click on whichever one applies, and you drag that over to the proper location on the map. But again, if you don't have this, you just proceed. All right, we're at step 4, address warnings and submit the route. So again, you'll have those warnings and errors that populate all through mapping. A lot of them will automatically disappear as soon as you do the correct grouping, as soon as you plot the point in the correct area.
So you did all that, the grouping part?
But do note, you have to review these guys. So at the next to the last tab is your issues tab, and that looks like a stop sign with an exclamation point. Errors, they are red errors. You got 3 tabs once you go into issues. So errors is the first tab, and those come up in red. They are a hard stop. You cannot proceed or submit the route if you have any errors. So they do have to be fixed. Then you have warnings. You can continue to work when you receive these warnings. However, it is best practice that you resolve them. So we do want you to review them, and most of the time they can and should be resolved. And guys, again, they're there for a reason. They're telling you that maybe you need a group. Or the points are too close to one another, or plotted wrong, or plotted out of sequence, different things like that. And then this last tab is your threshold warnings. And the same thing, you need to review them and just acknowledge that you received them. So then you get to, again, that last tab, which is your threshold warnings. Most routes have quite a few of them. So we need you to review all of them. And then what you would do, before you can get that submit button to highlight, this is the very last step before that button will highlight, you have to scroll down and you have to acknowledge that you have reviewed your issue. You will never get that gray button or that grayed out submit button to highlight until you've done that. And we've had people missing that already. So make sure to follow that step. So you would just scroll down, you would click, I acknowledge that I have reviewed the threshold warnings and validated the information and submit. As soon as you've done that and you did all the previous steps, your submit button will highlight. So at this point, you're at the end, you need to have the manager. If the facilitator is not the local manager, the local manager needs to come over to be involved in this process, because the local manager is required to review the information and also submit the route. So once the local manager arrives, you got the facilitator, the carrier, and the local manager. You're going to review that in a couple last pages where you're just verifying your route data. And then that unit manager has to enter their 8 passwords. But it gets a little tricky here, because if the facilitator is not the unit manager, the facilitator will need to log out and allow the unit manager to log in to enter their 8 password, because whoever's 8 password is entered here has to be the same individual that is logged into the system. So they have to match. So again, don't worry. No need. Your data will be saved for you. Just log out, the facilitator log out, and then the unit manager log in and submit the route. So, of course, we hope you get the green check success. If you see the red failure, sometimes it's just a connectivity issue. There's a lot of data trying to go through the system at one time. Give it a minute, clear your cache and cookies, log out, try again. But if that error persists, then you would need to reach out to the DPM support team. So again, success, your route has been submitted. You plotted your points. You reviewed your edit book groupings and dismounts. You followed everything in order, did everything. You reviewed your routes and warnings with the supervisor, and the supervisor has submitted the route. So you have completed the task of DPM. That task and that part of the process is about 5 to 7 hours. And remember, I told you the total process is about 8. So if DPM, that's the hardest part, that's the most detailed part with plotting all those points, is 5 to 7 hours. guess what? LTM's only 1 to 2 hours. So we're on the downhill almost at the end.